Border officials in the southern United States who have been dealing with the arrival of migrants from Central America for months are now experiencing a new surge of migrants from another part of the world. Men, women, and children from Central Africa have been arriving at the southern border. Many of them fled from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Angola, arriving in San Antonio with stories of government-sanctioned violence at home. The New York Times reports more than 700 migrants from Africa have been apprehended at the Texas border since October of 2018. Manny Fernandez joins me now. He is the Houston bureau chief for the New York Times. So Manny, why are these migrants fleeing the Congo and Angola and coming here?
Well, in some ways, it's the story of migration, sort of around the world right now. A lot of people are fleeing sort of violence, sort of government-led killings, and a lot of people are kind of fleeing for better opportunities in the same way that some of the Central Americans are fleeing.
It's quite a difference coming from Africa than coming up through Mexico. So what have you learned about their particular journeys to the U.S.?
Absolutely. It's completely different. It's a harrowing journey. It's a harrowing journey for the Central Americans, but for the Central Africans coming from a different continent, it especially was harrowing. A few days ago, I was standing on a downtown San Antonio sidewalk interviewing some of the Africans, and their emotions were raw. Even though they had started their journey, one man said 4 months ago. And standing there in San Antonio, they were in tears. They were talking about being attacked by criminals in the jungles at the border between Colombia and Panama. One woman told me that she was raped on the way. Another woman said that she lost her daughter on the way. They were just very. It was as if they had started this journey the other day, and because their emotions were so raw.
So just to be clear, they made their way from Africa to Central America and then came up through the Darien Gap, through the dangerous areas to the southern border of the U.S.
Absolutely. Some of the people that I interviewed in particular said they at first they were from the Congo, they fled to Angola. Some of them planned on staying in Angola, but then a lot of them decided that they didn't feel welcomed in Angola, and so they flew to Ecuador. And then from Ecuador, they took this very long journey by bus and by foot, fleeing up through Central America, up through Honduras and Guatemala, into Mexico, and then into the South Texas border.
Unbelievable. If that doesn't show desperation, nothing does. But of course, resources on our southern border are stretched thin as a result of the surge of migrants from Central America. So how is an added surge of African migrants impacting those communities, especially the one where you spent time in San Antonio?
Yeah, absolutely. It was having an impact. And, and the grand total of these numbers are fairly small, right? We're talking hundreds. For Central Americans, it's been thousands lately. But just that sort of influx of hundreds in two particular communities has had a big impact. And they've been scrambling for resources, for donated food, for interpreters. And those two communities are San Antonio and a city in Maine called Portland. Portland, Maine has a large Congolese community, and a lot of the Congolese that I interviewed talked about heading to Portland, Maine, and that's where they were headed.
So who's funding these trips, sending these people from San Antonio to Portland? Who pays for that?
Who pays for the trips from San Antonio to Portland?
Yes.
A lot of that money is coming from Catholic Charities in San Antonio, which got involved overall in the helping Central American migrants. And Catholic Charities has been there working with the city of San Antonio to provide services, provide transportation. And now that the Africans have come in, they've used some of that money for the Africans as well. So some of that is Catholic Charities buying their bus fare, buying their airfare, and some of that is the city of San Antonio paying for their meals and some of their sort of basic sort of needs.
So Money's coming from these other places. Is the federal government stepping up in any way to respond to this new African migrant surge?
Well, I mean, I guess yes and no, right? The Border Patrol is focused on this, and they have spent resources down at the border, getting interpreters, making sure they're processing the Africans. But in a lot of ways, the complaints I heard from local officials in San Antonio and Portland was basically, where's the federal government in this? And we do need help, and we shouldn't have Catholic Charities spending so much money, paying for this, that the federal government should be taking more of a lead. And so that was a complaint that a lot of the local officials were making.
It's our national border, and these seem to be valid refugees. I agree. Manny, thanks so much.
Sure. Thank you for having me.